Welcome to the Jacksonville Momcast, a podcast dedicated to real stories for real parents. Each episode, we'll chat with local Jacksonville moms and cover topics to help you navigate mom life on the First Coast. Thanks for joining us as we tackle all things motherhood and more with a focus on the 904. Welcome to episode 6 of the Jacksonville Momcast. Our guest today is Theresa Rogers, the current president of the Duval County Council of PTAs. In this episode, Theresa talks with us about what PTA does at the local and national level, how parents can get involved at their child's school, and why it's important to stay connected, particularly during this time of social distancing. Thanks for listening. Today we are talking with Theresa Rogers. Theresa is the Duval County Council PTA president. Theresa, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and about what your role is with PTA?
All right. So I have two daughters. One who is in high school. She's an 11th grader. And I have a second one who is starting her second year at UF. I'm a graduate of the University of Florida, and I worked in nonprofits before becoming a full-time unpaid volunteer, which is definitely something I had never really planned on. I had always thought I would go back to work at some point. And then I got involved volunteering for PTA when my older daughter was in kindergarten, and joined the board at her school several years after that. Over the years, I've served in a lot of different roles in PTA and on 3 different local units here in Duval County, including one that I still serve on now, my daughter's high school. I've also been involved with the county PTA for a number of years. And I was the president last year, and I'm the president this is my second year serving in that role for the Duval County Council of PTAs and PTSAs.
And explain to us a little bit about what PTAs do at the school level, and then go into a little more about what they do at the state or national level. I think a lot of people are familiar with a PTA organization at their local school, but they may not realize that there are upper levels of the organization that also operate at the county, state, and national level.
Okay, so it's kind of like an umbrella structure. So if we start at the local school level, what the local unit PTAs are doing is they're really trying to meet the needs of their specific school community, and they're doing that by providing programs that are tailored to the needs of their particular membership. One of the things that I am a big believer in and that I always say to our local units is to survey your membership, ask your membership what it is that they want so that they can make sure that they're meeting those needs, because they're different depending on what school they're at. And of course, right now, and always really, but current events help to dictate what local units devote their time to right now with COVID and back to school transitioning really being front and center. But PTAs at schools also do a lot of fun things and things that create a bridge between families and schools that help families to feel more connected to their children's schools. Things like carnivals, book fairs, muffins with moms, donuts with dads, which obviously is not really happening right now in light of COVID. And that's one of the things that PTAs really need to think about right now, is how to be creative and bring those things online. And a lot of them are trying to think of ways that they can do some of that. It's not going to look the same or be the same, but still finding ways to connect with their families and to help the families feel connected to the schools. At the school level, you're also going to find a lot of support from local units for the teachers at the school, and also, programs that are really designed to kind of help with that overall environment at the school. So national PTA, kind of getting back to the umbrella structure, they are, well, first of all, PTA, it's the oldest, largest grassroots child advocacy organization in the United States, and it's been around for over 100 years. It was 1897, I think might be the year that it was founded. They provide leadership at the top on the general direction of PTA through advocacy and platform issues that are voted on by the membership every year at the national convention. And there's a lot. If you go to the National PTA website, you can look up the different position statements, and there is a position statement on, just about anything you can think of, things like equity, child health and safety, substance abuse, arts and education. They actually have a position statement at the national level on school facilities and the importance of children having adequate school facilities, which of course I think is very interesting because of course that's an issue that we're dealing with right now here in Duval. They also at the national level offer a lot of resources. It's really rich with resources for families and a lot of e-trainings that are available. I mean, a lot of them for, PTAs, but really, kind of help with your professional development as a parent volunteer on any number of topics. And then, so then coming down from national PTA to state PTA, you find some of the same things, a lot of resources, trainings available, and then you have advocacy, but at our state level. And one of the things that I think is really great about the Florida PTA is that they have people who, during the entire legislative session, and I mean every day during the legislative session, they have people that are there in Tallahassee at the Capitol advocating on, any issue related to our children and, of course, educational issues. And so then after state, you have the county level. And depending on what state you live in, like some states, like, they might be divided up a little bit differently. But here in Florida, we have county councils. And the county councils are there to help provide support and training and, help the local units to stay up and running.
And so you mentioned a little bit about the half-cent referendum coming up. What are some other topics or ways that our Duval County Council serves our Duval County community or advocates for our Duval County kids?
So I was mentioning before, we are a support system for the PTAs and PTSAs. So we help to keep them operating and to stay in compliance and maintain their 501c3 status. We do also advocate for various things that either align with existing PTA platforms or sometimes we'll pass our own resolutions. One of the other, we passed the resolution last year supporting the half penny referendum, but we also passed another resolution that was opposed to what was originally known as the J1 bill that was calling for an elected instead of an appointed superintendent. And we passed a resolution opposing that. And we did that with our membership. They voted on it. And that's how, when we pass a resolution, we take it to our membership so that they can take it to their schools and then they can come back and vote. And so we know that whatever we have a resolution on, if it passes, that it's something that really does have that broad support. And it's not just something that we've put out there, which I think is important for people to understand and know that that's something that is not just the county council, but it's all of our membership. The half penny is probably one of our biggest focuses going into this fall after kind of getting through the school reopening and trying to help our local units work their way through how to handle that. Some of the other things that we had worked on prior to things closing down, and we actually had two different symposiums, one that we were putting on and one that we were partnering with that both had to be canceled, but one we were working with DCPS and several other local agencies on a vaping symposium that we were actually just weeks away from that, I think maybe 3 weeks away from it happening, and then obviously everything closed down. We also had a mental health symposium that we were working on with several local groups here in Duval as well, and that also had to be canceled. So those are some of the things that we'll probably work on this year. Vaping is a huge issue also right now in light of COVID and the added concerns that go along with that. And of course, mental health, it continues to be something that's a huge issue for our students and adults as well. And so those are some things that we'll continue to tackle this coming year.
Those are some really important topics. And I attended the school safety workshops you guys did last year, right before we got shut down. And there were some great speakers and some really good information for parents. So what are some common misconceptions about the PTA? And tell us a little bit about why they're incorrect.
So I think probably the biggest misconception is that PTAs exist just to fundraise. And that they are an ATM or a piggy bank or something like that. And first and foremost, we are an advocacy association. It's perfectly fine for PTAs to fundraise, and many PTAs do fundraise, but that money is raised by the membership to help support programs and the work of the PTA, to help support educational experience, that overall educational experience for the students, and help support our teachers, and not to make up for shortfalls in a school's budget and things that should be funded by our government. And that's one of the things that PTA believes very strongly in, is that the funding for our schools is something that we need to be advocating for in Tallahassee, and not expecting PTAs to make up for that. And one of the things that happens when PTAs are being relied upon to pay for things like that they shouldn't be paying for, is you have some schools that just cannot support a PTA for whatever reason. There's just not enough support. And then you also have some that cannot raise as much money as others. Some PTAs are able to raise a lot of money, and that's great that they can, but there's also those that it's just not going to happen for. And so when put in a position where that money is being used to help support and make up for budget shortfalls, then you create an even bigger divide than we already have in our schools. And you have, the schools that are the haves that are going to have even more now. And the have-nots, it's going to get even worse for those schools, because, if we're relying upon that instead of advocating for that money to be equitably distributed, then we're not helping all children. Another misconception that I think is a really big one for PTA is that PTA is just the purview of stay-at-home moms. And I don't know, maybe that was true a really long time ago, but nowadays PTA and PTA boards are full of busy, full-time working parents, and really should be welcoming parents from all different walks of life, and however much time they can give or however little time they give, if they're interested at all, that there should always be a place for them, always should be a role for them. And that's another misconception that I think is just kind of an old-fashioned notion about PTA.
And I think it's also important to note that PTA stands for Parent Teacher Association. So it's very important to include teachers, administrators, other members of the school community in your decision making, because it's ultimately a lot of times the teachers know exactly what they need in terms of if you're going to fundraise or provide supplies.
Absolutely. They're partners. They're all, the parents should be partners with the teachers and the administration to all come together and make things happen for our children.
So let's talk a little bit about the benefit of parents being actively involved in their child's education. And I'm glad you mentioned that PTA is not just for stay-at-home moms. I think that all parents, regardless of if they have time, resources, finances, want their children to have the best education possible. I think that's a pretty true statement across the board. There's no parent that wakes up in the morning and doesn't want that for their child. And as you mentioned, there's varying ways to be involved. So even at the smallest level, I know that there is a great benefit to parental involvement. So let's talk a little bit about those. Do you have anything you could mention for parents as to why they should try to get involved?
Sure. There have actually been studies done that show that students who have a parent or caregiver that's involved in some way in their education or educational experience, that they actually perform better academically in school, and regardless of income or background. So anything that a parent or caregiver is able to give, however much or however little, and I think anytime that is demonstrated to children, that interest and willingness to invest time or talent on behalf of a child, I think it sends a really great message and a really powerful message to those children that people care about me, and they want what's best for me, and they want me to achieve and to succeed. And I think that's a great thing that any parent or caregiver can give, even if it's just something really small. It can make a really big impact.
Absolutely. So let's talk now about 2020 back to school, which looks very, very, very different than it has in the past. And I know from a parent involvement perspective also looks very, very different than it has in the past. So why now, more than ever, is it important for parents to continue to be involved, even if their children are participating in virtual learning?
So I think on a personal level, I think it helps to create a sense of normalcy and reassurance for all of us, and that includes us adults. I think that at some point we're going to get back to life together. But I also think, as far as maybe, PTAs or any type of parent group, it's really important to not let things go and not drop the ball now. Keep up the important work that you've been doing so far. But I do think that right now, more than ever, and there's so many new ways for people to do this, but I think it's more important to be engaged and communicating with each other and sharing information, sharing resources. That's something that, there's so much out there, so much information and resources. And if we can make sure that we're getting that to everybody who needs it, so that everyone can find their way through this the best way that they can, anything like that we can do for each other, keeping each other informed on current events, which, every day things are, there's something new that's going on. But I think that that's something that parents and PTAs and really any community group right now, they need to step up and do their part in that. And then parents pass that on to anyone that might not be as connected as you are. I think that the more that we can do that for each other, and the more we're all in the know, the better off we're all going to be, and the better off all of our children are going to be. And it helps people to make better decisions too, the more informed you are.
I think that's such a good answer. And I have to tell you, when I wrote down that question, that I never would have expected that answer.
Oh.
For me, that's why it's important to keep connected. I was thinking from an advocacy standpoint, that now more than ever, we need to be advocates for our kids. And then also, we talked about fundraising not being the primary goal, but I think it's important to keep those connections with businesses and parents that you may not be able to raise money now, but the state of Florida is going to have a deficit. And I think we're going to see more budget cuts coming down the line. And so almost to just keep rolling so that you're ready when we need to do more advocacy work or more fundraising. So I'm really glad you gave that answer, because I think it's very important. And it's, a perfect example of how I didn't even think about that.
I think all the things that you just mentioned are also really, it's important to stay engaged with your business partners and obviously, continue advocating for important issues locally, like the half penny, but, pay attention to what's coming up in Tallahassee this year. Those are definitely really, really important as well, to not drop the ball on, I guess.
Absolutely. So with no visitors allowed on campuses, what are the best ways for parents to stay connected to their schools? And are there volunteer opportunities out there right now? And what are some things that can be done off campus?
So believe it or not, there actually are a lot of things that PTAs can and are already doing to stay involved and ask parent volunteers to help with. Already this summer, and as the school year has started, I've seen PTAs holding supply drives and asking for sanitizer donations. A PTA was asking over the summer for video submissions from students for their back to school teacher breakfast, to put together a video to show them. Other schools asking just for sweet messages for parents and kids to submit for the same kind of thing for the back to school teacher breakfast. We actually right now, we have a living document that we've sent out a couple of times in our last two newsletters that talks a little bit about being virtual, and we're asking people to help us to continue to add to that. And so we can idea share, and we can all come up with, new ideas or take old ideas and translate them. And that's also something that a lot of PTAs are working on, taking things like, a talent showcase, family game night, or things like Red Ribbon Week, Spirit Days, and making those all virtual. And those are all things that, PTAs can definitely use parent volunteers to help with. Even just, doing something on Zoom, you need to have people that are there, helping, from their computer. That could be a co-host. And there are lots of things that, PTAs would need parents for to help with things like that. Fundraising, I know that's a major concern for a lot of PTAs, how to do that right now. And a lot of the fundraising companies have been really good with adapting what they're doing and helping to translate that to virtual world. So that's also something that there will be a lot of PTAs that might choose to do something different, but there are some that will still want to do that. And that's something also that, some parents might be able to assist with. I also think there are still plenty of opportunities to continue to educate and advocate, attend Zoom webinars. There are the one-by-one webinars that are happening, for the half penny. A lot of different local organizations are holding things like that, forums and webinars and things that parents can attend. So I feel like if you kind of put your feelers out there or pay attention to what you see on social media, to not be afraid to take a chance and attend one of those and see what opportunities you might be able to find for yourself to get more involved in either what your PTA is doing, but also maybe some things going on in the community.
And it's funny being involved at a school. I help maintain the website, and it's always been kind of like a back burner-ish thing. And so yesterday we had a very long meeting with all the information we're going to try to get up on it and forms for parents to download, because the virtual students aren't getting copies of things and things aren't being sent. So to be able to just make it accessible to everybody. So it's interesting how this shift is kind of emerge. You need a whole new skill set, basically. So there's PTAs out there trying to recruit people to help them with websites and technology and things like that. So I think that parents who maybe were not as involved with those type of topics before, they might be looking for you.
Yeah.
So what's the best way for parents to connect with the PTA at their child's school?
This is definitely something that's going to be more challenging this year. And while we're still, for however long that we're mostly remote, a lot of times, the PTA is out and very present during the orientation and open house, and you see the PTA table right there, and people are taking, memberships, and you might find out how you can get more involved with either the board or volunteer. And right now, that's not something that parents are necessarily going to find at their school. I would encourage parents to try to find their PTA on social media or look at the website, see if they could find a contact us or reach out. I think the most important thing to do is to ask. If you are interested in being a part of the PTA board, or even just joining as a member, which obligates you to do nothing, or maybe you'd like to volunteer, here and there as you're available, I would say, find your PTA on social media. If you have any issues with finding that, you can always reach out to DCC PTA, and you can go to our website at dccpta.org and contact us, and we can try to connect you with the PTA at your school. But I would say that's the most important thing, is just to ask and let it be known that you want to be involved. Right now, PTAs absolutely need as much help as they can get. I think that no one is going to turn away help, hopefully. No one should be. I'll say it that way.
No, I would agree. I don't think anybody's turning away help at this point. And we'll put a link to the DCC PTA site in our program notes so that people can access that if they want to find you guys and find out more. So if I'm at a school that doesn't have a PTA or any type of parent organization, how do we go about forming one?
So if the school either has never had a PTA before, or maybe they had one that has gone inactive over the last few years, DCC PTA can assist with either chartering a new PTA or reorganizing an inactive PTA. We have a vice president of local units, and that's one of the main things that she does, is she works with prospective PTAs, leading them up to the chartering or reorganizational meeting so that they'll be ready for it. And then we will, we used to go out and do this in person, but we've actually already done one in the last few weeks over Zoom, a reorganizational meeting. And then when they come out of that, they will have members, they'll have bylaws, they'll have officers, and then after that, we help them with those new next steps, applying for their letter of determination, which then they take to the bank to go open up their bank account, applying for their EIN number if either they're a brand new PTA or had not been, had been closed at some point, they would need an EIN number. So we can help them through that process. And then once they're on their feet, ready to go, we help provide training and resources to, to get them, make sure that they're a functioning PTA and that they are set up for success.
That's perfect. And so closing it out here, do you have any other tips for parents heading into this school year? I think we all could use any tips anybody has.
I think no matter what situation anyone's in and what decisions they've made for their children's education, whether it's completely online or hybrid or whatever things are going to look like 9 weeks from now or, beyond, I think that trying to keep routines is a really important thing. Both my children are older. And so, I guess they're kind of keeping their own routines, which I think is really good. Getting up and still getting themselves ready for school, even though, you might just be going and getting on your computer. I have a friend who makes her child a lunch and packs it in a lunchbox so that they kind of have that feeling of being at school, because it's kind of sad and they miss their friends and they want to still feel like it's okay and it's normal and that, life hasn't completely gone off the rails. But I think those types of things and doing things to help keep kids active, I think that's something that's also important. It's obviously really, really hot out right now, but anything that they can do to kind of still have those experiences that they would get in school, trying to do our best to recreate them, I guess, at home.
Thank you so much for talking with us today. And if anybody has any questions about Duval County Council PTA, we'll put some links. And if they're looking to get involved, we encourage you to reach out to your homeschool. If you need additional information, I know that Duval County Council is always there to help out and to help connect you to parents at your schools. That's it for today. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Jacksonville Momcast. For more information about what you've just heard, check out our show notes and find us on Instagram at Jacksonville Momcast. If you've enjoyed this episode and know someone who should tune in, please subscribe and share it. We look forward to you joining us on our next episode of Jacksonville Momcast.